Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Armor of Truth Live number 304. AOT 304. CERN is to run during the upcoming eclipse. States are preparing for mayhem. It's weird. And hate speech laws are taking effect. Let's jump right into it. Right here. We received this message from one of our viewers in Scotland. We'll keep his name out of it. We got this yesterday. And, talking about today, because these laws go into effect today. It says, today in my country is the last day of free speech. And hate speech becomes law. Scotland has fallen. And not a single shot was fired in the taking of this once proud nation. He says, thank you to AOT for all you do. And looks like I'll have to be careful what I say from now on, as the price for hate speech is carrying a 7-year sentence. And that doesn't mean just online. Anyone can report you for this hate speech. So imagine living in a world where sitting in your own living room and saying, men can't be women. Imagine that could result in the police lodging something called a hate incident against you. Imagine, too, that your legally protected right to express such an opinion counted for nothing, because all that mattered was whether the person who heard you perceived it to be offensive. This is arbitrary. It's subjective. It's crazy. Well, if you live in Scotland, this is the world you woke up to earlier today, as of Monday. It's not an April Fool's prank. Right? Despite the date, this is not an April Fool's prank. The Hate and Public Order is what it's called in Scotland. The Hate and Public Order Act, according to its critics, will be a state-sponsored assault on free speech. Summer put out an article yesterday on our Substack that has the relevant links that you'll need to understand this and all of its implications. The Telegraph reported that Police Scotland has just promised to investigate every hate crime complaint that it receives. If the complainant or the victim, as they're referred to officially, insists that they were upset by something they perceive to be a hate crime, it will be logged as a non-crime hate incident. A non-crime hate incident. Even if there's not a shred of evidence of any crime being committed. Now, this is similar to what we've seen in the UK, we've seen in Australia, where prayer has been banned, not just outwardly, but even if you're praying quietly to yourself, in a public place or in some place where it's not allowed, you can be charged. Also, what's interesting about this law is that it makes no concession for it's okay to slander women. Little wonder that women's rights campaigners fear that trans radicals will use the new law to settle scores and silence anyone who dares challenge their worldview. If George Orwell were still alive, he might write a book about it and call it 2024. This legislation gives police the power to seize personal property, like your computers, your mobile devices. Gives them the power to search for evidence of criminality, and all they need is a complaint. Somebody has to complain that you've done this. Right? And they can hold on to these devices until they decide whether to prosecute, which could take many months. They might also require people accused of hate crimes to attend police stations to come down and be questioned, right? To be interviewed. Something you should never do when you're suspected of anything. You should never talk to the police. Not that you. It's this whole idea of I don't want to look guilty. Doesn't matter. You shouldn't ever be, willingly. You should always have your attorney with you because they're trained to get you to say things that would incriminate you. That's for another show. They'll even come out to your house if someone complains about you. Now, as the old saying goes, the process is the punishment, or the real action is your target's reaction. And that's what I want to focus on today, because this is not really about protecting people's feelings. It's not about protecting a particular class. This is about fundamentally changing all of society. This law was passed in 2021, and it comes in force today in Scotland specifically. Now, the government insists that the law is needed. This law is needed to protect victims. Humza Yousaf, here, it's his law. This is Scotland's first minister, Humza Yousaf. He's criticized disinformation for being spread about this law. Disinformation. Well, the critics say that it's really just state-sponsored an assault, a state-sponsored assault. It's activism. I would call it more like activism, state-sponsored activism. But it is an assault on free speech. And these alleged incidents will go on record whether there's evidence or not. Now, how did Scotland become an Orwellian nightmare? Listen to some of this. This new law to tackle hate crime in Scotland will be implemented on April 1st. And in the past few weeks, there have been escalating concerns about how it will be policed and how it might affect freedom of speech. Scotland's First Minister, Humza Yousaf, hits back at this, saying disinformation and inaccuracy are being spread about this law. Members of the public who are being encouraged to call the police if they're upset with someone that doesn't agree with them, or if they want to make an anonymous complaint, they can do so through a network of hate crime third-party reporting centers. Now, we're talking about physical places that you can go to and report someone. Now, what kind of places are we talking about here? Well, check this out. Let me show you what kind of places in Scotland where you can go to report someone for hate speech. They include university campuses. There's a salmon factory in Berwickshire. And you can go to a sex shop called Luke and Jack. And you can report hate speech there. Let's take a look at, here's the place where you can go to report your hate speech. What kind of place is this? Well, you can see here we've got the little, you see there they've got the little bears. And what is that? Oh boy. Yeah. Oh boy. Oh yeah. I can't even show you most of the pictures here. Here's some, you know what all this stuff is. Yeah, it's let's get out of that. So you can go there to report your hate crime. What's that tell you? What does that tell you? That's Luke and Jack. That place is in Glasgow. So gives you an idea what we're dealing with here. Susan Smith, a director of the feminist campaign group for Women Scotland, says we're looking at an army of local spies potentially taking anonymous reports from other local spies and passing them on to the police. Some people are gleeful about this, and they're going to report everyone they don't like. Dr. Michael Foran, lecturer in public law at the University of Glasgow, says this new legislation, quote, brings the criminal law into your home, even when you're having private conversations. He says the classic example might be a teenager who is, let me get this back to there we go. Classic example might be a teenager who's particularly upset that their parents don't agree with them on something, like trans rights or whatever. It could be anything. And then they anonymously report their own parents for a hate crime. Part of the problem, he says, is that there's nothing to deter false complaints or malicious complaints made by people who want to settle scores with each other. And that's because it's difficult to imagine how you could prove someone was wasting police time when the whole thing is based entirely on perception rather than evidence. So again, it's arbitrary and subjective. The law will criminalize threats and abuse, quote, that are intended to stir up hatred. Again, arbitrary. Who's going to decide? It applies to religion, race, sexual orientation, age, disability, and transgender identity. So really 5 categories. You've got religion, race, age, disability, and then you've got sexual orientation and transgender identity. Are really more like one. So it's 5 categories. Now, of course, the fear is that this could be used as it could be weaponized against English, against English people for sure, Scottish, Irish, could be weaponized against innocent people. Lois McClatchy Miller from Alliance Defending Freedom International told Premier Christian News that she's concerned the way the law has been written could lead to churchgoers being criminalized simply for their beliefs. She said, nobody wants to make anyone feel hated. And that's true. There is no true Christian who wants someone to feel hated. That's antithetical to who we are. But one of the concerns is the law around this idea of stirring up hatred. Even if we disagree with what's happened, we could potentially be liable for prosecution, and the penalties in this law are very harsh, up to 7 years in prison as a maximum sentence for somebody who breaks this law. So it's a very serious situation. She said people are going to be a little bit scared to engage in important conversations, just like our viewer in Scotland says here. Looks like I'm going to have to be careful what I say. Yeah, for good reason, right? Let's see. Rebecca Crowther, Chief Executive of Equality Network in Scotland, told Sky News, quote, freedom of expression is really important, and there's a defense for that within this legislation. People are free to say what they like, even if it might cause offense or shock or disturb other people. That's just what we live with when we live with the freedom of speech, unquote. Yeah. Now, the point is to remove all of that free speech. So anybody who's promoting this, anybody who thinks this is a good idea out there, you should remind these people that they'll be next. They'll be in the crosshairs next. She said what it does legislate against is when that freedom of speech strays into something abusive. Again, what's abusive is now arbitrary, highly subjective. Harm, hatred, things like this is what they say. So now this brings up cases like this. Let's jump over here to Twitter or X. So this tweet, I think this was yesterday. This was on Easter. This is David Hogg. If you remember, David Hogg became well-known, became famous or infamous, however you might be looking at it, from one of the mass casualty events that happened in Florida at one of the high schools in the last several years. But anyway, you can see what he has said here. You can't effing claim to love freedom when half your agenda is controlling what half the population does with their bodies and stop people from accessing gender-affirming care simply so they can exist as who they are. Bigotry and patriarchy are antithetical to freedom, David Hogg says. Okay, well, I responded to this. Unless you have a coherent definition of freedom, which we don't get here, we never get any coherent definitions, there's just a lot of ranting. So without a coherent definition of what freedom is, beyond this arbitrary notion of being authentic to self, well, David Hogg's message here is nothing more than an angry complaint about the universe, about the state of nature. For example, by his standard, what he's saying here, right? Bigotry and patriarchy are antithetical to freedom, he says. We don't know what he means by freedom, though. But if we back up a couple lines, we see his definition of freedom is someone being who they are, being allowed to be who they are. Well, where does the line get drawn there? Ted Bundy? What if he says, well, killing people is who I am. That's my authentic self. Is it freedom or is it bigotry? Is it patriarchy for us to say no? No, it might be who you are, but you're going to be who you are in prison for the rest of your life. Nazi officers? See, this is ridiculous. This turns out silly. Turns out to be silly. So this is what you call agitprop. It's trying to agitate you. Remember, this is the phrase, this is the term you need to take with you for this week. This is one of our phrases of the week. The real action is the target's reaction. That's Saul Alinsky. So you have to be very careful when things like this happen that you don't overreact, because that would be exactly what they want you to do.
The highest art of warfare.
Let's listen to Yuri Bezmenov. Many of you who've been with us for a while know who Yuri Bezmenov is. Listen to this.
The highest art of warfare is not to fight at all, but to subvert anything of value in your enemy's country, be it moral traditions, religion, respect to your authority and leaders, cultural traditions, anything. Put white against black, old against young, wealthy against poor, and so on. Doesn't matter. As long as it disturbs society, as long as it cuts the moral fiber of a nation, it's good. And then you just take this country, when everything is subverted, when the country is disoriented and confused, when it is demoralized and then destabilized.
Demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. Those are the steps of what's known as active measures. And that is certainly what we see at work here. Demoralization is where the idea of God is removed from a society. And then after no morals, right? David Hogg says, we should get to express who we are. That's what freedom is. Well, there's a difference, right? They've got the idea of freedom from Enlightenment principles, the French Revolution. And this idea of Enlightenment principles it's freedom to do whatever I want. The idea of freedom that the Founding Fathers had in the United States or in America was freedom from tyrants. It didn't have anything to do with freedom to do whatever I want, freedom to explore all the depravity I want. That's what you'll hear a lot of modern day anarchists or libertarians say. As long as it doesn't hurt someone else, well, it's impossible. As we showed, Dusty Devers explained very well the other day that what happens inside someone's home, what happens in the bedroom, absolutely spills over into the street. It does have a corrosive effect on society. Well, X/Twitter doing the same thing. Everyone who feels comfortable on X today, be careful, because X is going to reduce the visibility of posts that purposely ignore a person's preferred pronouns, for example. And if they're going to do that, then there's another step after that. Right here's the article from Summer found this one over at Reclaim the Net. It's going to reduce the visibility of posts that purposely ignore a person's preferred pronouns. This is from March 1st. And it's been done kind of quietly, right? Linda Yaccarino is the one that's making all this happen. So someone should ask, sorry about that. Someone should ask Elon Musk, are you really the champion of free speech? We will reduce the visibility of posts that purposefully use different pronouns to address someone other than what that person uses for themselves. So it works like this. You might say, well, I'm not going to participate, right? My pronouns are, what I was, they are self-evident. So I'm not going to participate. But then I said, that's fine, but you must, maybe at your place of work. That's fine. You don't have to do that. But when this man wearing lipstick and a dress stands before you, you have to bear false witness. You have to lie and refer to him as a she or as a woman, or you could lose your job. You see how this works, right? This is how society becomes corrupted. So what happens inside a person, inside the bedroom, absolutely does have an effect on the street. It's for freedom's sake that we have such a contemptuous public square. Where freedom of speech is healthy, there is constant competition for your attention. So we have to understand this, that freedom of speech, just like liberty otherwise, is something that has to be fought for and protected. You have to be vigilant about it. Because what happens in a context of freedom of speech, everyone's competing for your attention. They're competing for your allegiance or your investment. And it can be tedious, but all of that is good as long as it's allowed to run freely. Now, there are standards. There are standards that we have to adhere to. I'll get to that in just a moment. But so we need to celebrate the freedom of others to be able to chastise us openly in the public square. And in fact, we ought to welcome that because it gives us an opportunity to respond to what they say. But they know they don't have truth on their side, so then they shut Christians out of the public square because Christians are the ones are the only one who make claims to absolute truth and can defend it. So the problem begins when this freedom is abused to advocate for removing one's political or rhetorical adversaries. This circumstance makes abundantly clear, however, that for freedom of speech and religion to survive, coherent first principles must be honored, right? That means there must be some transcendent authority that's beyond man. A lot of what we see here is public relations and propaganda meant to fundamentally change society. They're selling you a new way of life. And they're asking the questions, how can we shape a message for maximum impact on the target audience? The purpose of any public relations campaign is to sway opinion and to create new belief systems in people. Public relations is social engineering. That's what this is mostly about. It's not really about, once again, it's not about protecting certain people by keeping other people from hurting their feelings. That's step 1 or step 2. We're going to step 10 with this thing. There's a greater goal at work here to fundamentally change society altogether. The thing to tell, let's say this once again, the thing to tell those who you encounter who agree with these laws, who think it's a good idea to protect people's feelings this way, is that if you support this, you're next. You're going to be the one who's next. Now, what's interesting about these campaigns, these PR campaigns, is they're not designed to do anything creative. They're destructive. Consider the language of a politician as he or she makes promises. These words don't mean anything anymore. Politicians, public health experts, climate change gurus, LGBT, queer activists, etc., etc. They all speak in vapid generalities. Let's go back to David Hogg for a second. These are vapid generalities. You can't claim to love freedom. What does he think freedom is? When half of your agenda is controlling what half of the population does with their bodies. As if that has no effect on society. As if everyone should be allowed to explore their flesh, to be able to explore whatever it is that they want to explore. Where is the line drawn? Stop people when you're trying to stop people from accessing gender affirming care. Nobody is stopping anyone. Nobody is stopping anyone from getting health care, actual health care. You see how the language is used. Gender affirming care. So they can exist as who they are. Not everyone should be allowed to exist as who they are. That's the assumption here. So this is some kind of generalized version of freedom, a generalized understanding of the common good. Over time, this becomes normalized and significantly damages the language and the culture. And so when language is degraded, education degrades, yielding a degraded culture. In school, over the past several decades now, what's happened is the curriculum has shifted from teaching the kids what benefits the culture, and it's shifted now to let's teach the kids according to what they're interested in. So this is relevance, right? They're now taught according to what's relevant rather than what's true, good, and beautiful. And so we see comments like this. This is someone who's been trained up in that way. Right? Your feelings, what you feel relevant, is the most important thing. That is truth. Language becomes the tool of influencers who infiltrate and demoralize society, and then destabilize society ultimately. So when language is degraded, morality becomes arbitrary, society loses track of what is real, and therefore anything goes. It was G.K. Chesterton who said that when people, I'm going to get it right, exactly right. Well, when people forget God, they don't, when people stop believing in God, they don't then believe in nothing. They believe in whatever comes along next. They'll believe anything. Hemant Mehta, the friendly atheist, here's another, he put out another interesting comment. Let's see here. Yesterday, because, yesterday was Resurrection Day. Many call it Easter. And, of course, it was also proclaimed by Joe Biden to be Transgender Day of Visibility. Well, Hemant Mehta points out, hey, this has been like this for 15 years, and Biden just so happened to mark the occasion with a proclamation. Today, coincidentally, is also Easter. Conservatives are now falsely insisting there's an anti-Christian conspiracy afoot. Well, I couldn't help it. I couldn't help myself. I had to respond with our graphic. Now, he's the friendly atheist, so he's out there, he is vehemently anti-Christian. If you can't drop the Antichrist facade long enough to at least admit that this tactic of proclaiming Trans Day of Visibility on Easter Sunday, he could have done it last year, he could have done it next year. He didn't have to do that right now, but they did. So if you can't drop the Antichrist facade long enough to see that this is a tactic called directly from Saul Alinsky's playbook for getting the most political, social mileage out of one action, are you then actually interested in reason? Or are you just being provocative? Now, I don't know if anybody responded to this or not, but I don't think anybody can see us on X, to be honest with you. I think we're just invisible. I think Linda Yaccarina has already just sort of put our account over in the corner. Anyway. Really, because absolutely no engagement on anything. And we say some provocative things, not to be provocative. We just tell the truth. That is provocative in our society. And so he was responding to the House Judiciary GOP Twitter account, X account, who said, today is Easter and nothing else, in response to the Trans Day of Visibility. And Hemant Mehta says, just the saddest group of wannabe theocrats. And so, see, the problem here is Hemant Mehta, who's a very intelligent guy, coming up short on having proper rhetoric to actually deal with what the person's saying. No one's interested in theocracy. No Christian is interested in theocracy. So that's a straw man he's arguing against there. It's not the point. That is not what this is about. You go on down here and see, here's some responses. Your religion has no place in our government or our schools. Happy Easter. Our religion. What about their religion? Right? No, the idea was to be that the state would not endorse a religion, but it has now. And so what this person, Jerry Gray, has done, he doesn't understand what he's looking at. The federal government has officially endorsed a Gnostic theosophical religion actually endorsed it, said, I see you, we support you, enshrining more or less a nationally recognized religion. So what about that religion, Jerry Gray? What about that religion? You see, people have for so long been trained in what's relevant rather than being trained in what's true, good, and beautiful, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and taught how to think through these issues. They don't know. It's all emotions, right? It's all about who can fire the next bomb. Summer put this piece together here that Biden appears to be like Nebuchadnezzar now. He believes that he has established this kingdom, that he did it. He did it on his own. And here we see some contradictions. This was, let's see, we saw this, Summer showed me this on Matthew Everhard's Instagram, and I went and found it on Twitter, X, whatever it is. So you can see some contradictions here, right? Happy Easter to everyone. Next, it was same day. This is the same day. Happy Trans Day of Visibility. He says, as we gather with loved ones, we remember Jesus' sacrifice. We pray for one another and cherish the blessing of the dawn of new possibilities. What do you call this? When we want to understand how to respond to something or how to think of something, we need to find a biblical term to apply to it. Well, the biblical terminology here would be double-mindedness. We'll talk about that in a second, but before we do, let's look at also Donald Trump. Donald Trump was always in the news, isn't he? And this is that picture where he's holding up the Bible in front of the boarded up church. But something also happened. Let's see here. Oh, I wanted to show you here that the marketing. Again, think of what you're seeing here as public relations. All of this is public relations. All of it is public relations. So one of the things that happened was, you saw that Trump put out an Easter message, Happy Easter to all, including crooked and corrupt prosecutors and judges that are doing everything possible to interfere with the presidential election, put me in prison, including those many people that I completely and totally despise because they want to destroy America. So happy Easter. And he went on to, there you go, we're being presented Donald Trump as, as a Christian candidate. Now that's a dangerous thing to do. We don't have to do that. Christians can vote for him, they can support him, but you don't have to make him out to be this. Of course, this is Donald Trump's own social media outlet. So again, this is public relations. Right. Donald Trump is not known for speaking this way. This is a new thing. He's playing to his base. Again, here, stand for Israel. There we go with that. Again, a lot of, and whether or not you believe that's true or not, we're still being sold something here. So let's back up here then. We saw Biden wishing everyone happy Easter, talking about the sacrifice of Christ while on the same day, transgender day of visibility. Well, let's see, let's come back over here. Yeah, there we go. Well, a double-minded man. Well, this shows clearly double-mindedness. Oh, I forgot to show you the Donald Trump piece too. So this was something that Trump put up on his Truth Social thing here. Let's see if we can check this out. If it works. Wow, is it going to play? Again, keep in mind that what you're looking at here is is public relations. It's just not going to play. I have no idea why that's doing that. So I'll try to fast forward through it. So it was a video of some trucks in Long Island, and this one comes by, and they're flying the Trump flag and police for Trump, and okay. But here what we see is you see Joe Biden tied up, being depicted as tied up and in the trunk. And Donald Trump thought that was a good idea. He thought that was a good idea to put out there, on the same day or just before he gave all these Easter blessings. So how do we think about this? James chapter 1, verse 8. Let's go here. So if we go back to verse 5, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. But let him ask in faith with no doubting, for the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea that is driven and tossed by the wind. For that person must not suppose that he'll receive anything from the Lord. He is a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. What does that actually mean? Because we see double-mindedness here in both of these men. Double-mindedness is a very common position. All of us battle with it. What is it? The term double-minded there, the Greek text that underlies the English translation there, is dipsukos. It literally means double-souled. You could say it's like one soul proclaims, I believe, and later the soul in defiance declares, I don't believe. It's interesting that this word appears only in the book of James. It appears twice, in chapter 1, verse 8, and chapter 4, verse 8. Bible scholars conclude that James may have coined this word, dipsukos, or double-souled. This kind of wavering and instability that goes far beyond prayer, which is the context of this verse. Double-mindedness, or dipsukos, is a brand of instability that is present and apparent in all a person does. You can see there in the text, unstable in all his ways. Double-mindedness is a kind of indecisiveness or an inflated self-regard that is so pervasive that it neutralizes or spoils the person's ability to be effective in their personal life, in their business life, or social life and spiritual life. Now, when we say effective, we mean by the biblical standard, which is not the same as the worldly standard. So what James is making clear here to us is that what we need to be on alert for, what we need to be on alert for these characteristics, we need to be on alert for these characteristics in our own lives because the consequences are destructive. James is saying here point blank that a person like this will not receive anything from the Lord. So when you see these examples of double-mindedness, James, the just one, they called him, the brother of Jesus, who was converted at the sight of the risen Savior, is telling us here, under inspiration of the Holy Spirit, that someone who tries to live in both worlds is not going to receive anything from the Lord. But let's make sure we differentiate clearly between a person who is self-righteous, a double-minded and a double-minded doubter, versus a person who feels inadequate or that their faith is weak. There is a major difference here. So if you're someone who just struggles with doubt, feeling that your faith is weak, questioning your assurance of salvation, that's different. All right, that's a different kind of doubting that we're talking about here. Mark chapter 9 says, if you can do anything, take pity on us and help. And Jesus said to the man, if you can, all things are possible to him who believes. Immediately the boy's father cried out and was saying, I do believe, help my unbelief. Now when Jesus saw that a crowd was rapidly gathering, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and do not enter him again. And after crying out and throwing him into terrible convulsions, that evil spirit came out. And the boy became so much like a corpse, he fell down. He fell over as if he was dead. Most of them thought, he's dead. Verse 27, but Jesus took him by the hand and raised him, and he stood up. Now it seems like this man in this account here is doubting, but he said, if you can do anything, wasn't directed at whether or not Jesus could actually do anything. Rather, the if here was about the man's sense of inadequacy. He was thinking about his own inadequacy or his own weakness in faith. This is why he cried, I do believe. Please help my unbelief. It's basically saying, increase my faith. So Jesus told him, if you can believe, all things are possible to him who believes. So when we trust God as true in all things, and we take God at his word, then everything God promises becomes a possibility to us. So this man here did believe in Jesus' power to deliver his boy. Why else would he have thought to bring the boy to Jesus in the first place? But he also recognized his own weakness and his sense of inadequacy, something that we all experience at times. So he pled with Jesus, Lord, I do believe, help my unbelief. This man's weakness in faith was not a rebellion against God or somehow in conflict with God's will or promise. The man didn't deny God's promise. He wanted it more than anything, but somehow it just seemed too good to be true. So there's a difference here between what we're talking about, double-mindedness, and then just this kind of self-doubt. Luke 17, verse 5. And the apostles said to the Lord, increase our faith. And the Lord said, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you would say to this mulberry tree, be uprooted and be planted in the sea, and it would obey you. So with this faith, the size of a mustard seed, one of the smallest seeds in the world, the man that brought his son to Jesus, expecting to be healed, cried out to Jesus, help my unbelief. He had this small faith, but help my unbelief is something that a man who has faith, only a person who has faith could say that. So if that's your prayer today, to understand you have faith. It's not something that someone that hasn't been given faith would say. Charles Spurgeon said, when a man has no faith, he's unconscious, unaware of his unbelief. But as soon as he gets a little faith, a mustard seed of faith, then he becomes aware of his inadequacies, the greatness of his unbelief. The difference is that this man wasn't facing in both directions at the same time. He wasn't dipsukos. He wasn't double-minded. He wasn't a double-minded doubter that we see up here in verse 8. He was aware of his weakness, and he had set his heart to believe. These things are very different circumstances, very different experience, and a very different outcome. We see, joyously, Christ responded to this demonstration of true faith as his prayer was answered and his son was healed. So in response to this kind of faith, God will give wisdom to those who ask for it. And God will enable them to persevere in times of trial. And we see if any of you lacks wisdom or faith or strength or anything good, let him ask God, who gives and gives and gives generously because he loves his children. We see later in James chapter 4, God is opposed to the proud but gives grace to the humble. Draw near to God and he will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Humble yourselves in the presence of the Lord, and he will exalt you. We see it in Proverbs 15, verses 8 and 21. You see it in 1 Kings 18 as well. Matthew 6:24, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon or God and wealth. We see this also in Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. Alice walking down the path and says, she sees the Cheshire Cat, would you tell me, please, which way should I go from here? Should I take this way or that way? The Cheshire Cat said, that depends a good deal on where you want to go. And Alice says, I don't much care where I'm going. The Cheshire Cat says, it doesn't matter much which way you go then. So restlessness and confusion are the marks of a double-minded person. Confusion, right? Confusion in this case. The marks of a double-minded person, someone who's facing both ways, both directions at the same time. He's always in conflict with himself. This kind of inner conflict is a barrier between God and that person, so that he can never confidently trust and depend on God's grace and promises. This person has no defined direction, or his defined direction is himself, his own desires, and as a result doesn't get anywhere spiritually. Such a person is unstable in all he does, like an animal with a head at either end of his body, constantly trying to walk in two directions at once. Jesus declared in Matthew 6, no one can serve two masters. If you, or someone you know, struggles with trying to split your love between two opposing forces, here are some recommendations. Read, study, memorize God's Word, because God's Word is powerful. It's like a seed. You need to plant it inside your head, inside your mind. Plant that seed in your mind. Internalize the Word of God so that when you think, you begin to think in Scripture. It makes it easier. And prayer, of course. Remember, we were talking about yesterday if we're in a spiritual war, what are actually our weapons? You know, it's the gospel and it's prayer and it's exposing darkness. This is the true antidote for anxiety in the world. This is the antivirus software for your mind. It's the best that you can possibly have. Because it is the Word of God that produces faith in us. Romans 10:17 says that. Likewise, you must pray, beginning with repentance, and then ask God for faith, because God freely gives what is good to those who ask. We see it here in James, and we also see it in Luke 11. And it's good to ask for an increase of faith. Now, let's get back over here, where we were. Because we've got more weird stuff here to finish up with. On April 8th, a solar eclipse will black out the sun for over 30 million people. This will be the first total solar eclipse visible anywhere in the world since December of 2021. It'll be the first one seen from the United States since August of 2017. Now that one came right over where we are here in the southeast, and it was a sight to behold. So what is this? A total solar eclipse occurs when the moon completely blocks the face of the sun, turning daytime into darkness for about 4 minutes if you're in the path of totality. This eclipse will be visible to some degree to an estimated 32 million people along a narrow path through North and Central America. We have let me get the eclipse map. I had it here and I lost it. Shouldn't be too hard. I'm sure most of you are aware by now, but this will give you an idea. There you go. That's the path. Again, this eclipse will be visible to about 32 million people along this narrow path through North and Central America. Other parts of the United States outside of the path of totality will experience a partial eclipse. So, right here in western North Carolina, can't see my cursor here, but there in western North Carolina, we're going to be about 85, 87%. And that's still going to be pretty awesome. Last time we were up into the high 90s. It came right over us. Now, after passing through Mexico, the first state to see the total solar eclipse on April 8th will be Texas. And that'll be at about 1:30 p.m. Central Time. Of course, then it moves through Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and then out through Canada and out to the North Atlantic. Now, what am I talking about this for? Because things are getting weird. Super weird. There's madness afoot out there about this thing. For example, New York prison officials on April 8th from about 2 to 5 p.m. are canceling visitation. They're going to put inmates on lockdown the day of the eclipse. Why? Why is that? Why would that have an effect? Just another weird story. Let's see. Let's had it here. Yeah, there it is. The New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision announced these plans to cancel visitations at nearly 24 facilities in the path of path of totality on April 8th. They said the plan doesn't just affect visitations. A system-wide lockdown will be put in place during the eclipse as a safety precaution. Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, said earlier this year that the state plans to ensure a unique, safe, and inspiring experience for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers and visitors who plan to experience the event throughout New York. Do you think that's weird that they're going to lock the prisoners down? Well, it gets stranger. Many states within the path of totality here have issued warnings in the past several weeks. Warnings. And we're not sure why, but we know that because it's supposed to draw crowds from around the nation. People are going to descend on these places to see. But back in 2017, we had, you could see the top left of the screen down to the bottom right of the screen. The eclipse passed just about like that. It passed through more of the nation then than it does now, and we didn't have any of this. There was none of this kind of buzz going on in 2017. And right where we are, it went right over us. So, and we had none of that for some reason. So, but since 2017 and today, we have had 2020. We've had madness. Something has changed in our world. So, officials across the nation have voiced concerns about stretched public safety resources and, quote, enormous strain on local hospitals and congested roadways. At least 4 states within the path of totality have urged residents to stock up on groceries before the eclipse. Some officials have already issued disaster declarations ahead of the event. Disaster declarations before the eclipse. Some of the schools have decided to close, citing student safety. At least 4 states are warning residents to stock up on food before the eclipse. Several other states have closed schools and warned of overwhelming traffic. And look at this. How about this? Yeah, there's that story. But there's also this one. Next month's solar eclipse could cause widespread cell phone disruptions for millions. It doesn't have anything to do with the eclipse. What they're saying is that let's see right here. Due to a strain on local networks. More than 3.7 million people are set to visit these states, they say. So to ease the burden on many American cities, T-Mobile is deploying additional cell sites that will be on standby in areas expecting high tourist traffic. In a small town in Ohio, which could see 250,000 visitors, Verizon is setting up a portable tower ahead of the cosmic event. Just strange. Rebecca Owens, director of the Richland County Emergency Management Authority said cell phone reception will be very, very sketchy. There'll be lots of issues with connectivity and that type of thing. Strange. So let's talk about it for a second. Like, what have they? This is so. Here's the Oklahoma. Here's the Oklahoma's Oklahoma.gov. So here's their website for eclipse preparation. I'll tell you what some of the other Texas officials have issued a slew of warnings, including that people living within the path of totality should stock up on groceries and gas and run any errands such as filling prescriptions in the days before the eclipse. One official also urged pet owners to stock up on supplies for their animals. They're also worried that visitors to the areas could drain food and fuel supplies, strain city and county infrastructure. Oklahoma, here's this webpage, dedicated to the solar eclipse preparation for southeastern Oklahoma, said that several state agencies are preparing for the eclipse. Oklahoma is expected to receive, they said, an influx of 17,000 to 66,000 visitors. That's not that. That's Oklahoma holds the College World Series every June or July, and they get that many people for that. They don't declare a state of emergency for that. Interesting. It's just weird. They also warned residents to stock up on supplies. Ohio. Officials in Ohio said you could have traffic delays. According to News 5 Cleveland, the Ohio Department of Transportation is urging Ohio residents to fill their cars with gas and keep snacks and water handy in case of long delays. What are we, children? Yeah, I mean, I think that's maybe people are. Maybe people really do need this today. I mean, look around you. Indiana, up to 1 million people are expected to travel to Indiana to view the eclipse, including the one news station, WTHR, and state police. They're urging residents to prepare for the onslaught. They also said the diamond ring stage of the eclipse, you can see that. That's this part right here. Oh boy. Are we shut down here? Well, I think we probably still got audio, but I don't know. Hang on with me for a second. I'll see if I can get this worked out. Yep. I think we're dead. Well, it looks like, unfortunately, I think we've probably still got audio. Let me check it because I think we can. Hang on, I'm getting a call from the producer now. Hang with me just a second. Yeah, well. Okay. Hang on one second. I think there's something I can do. Nope. It's not going to work. All right, well, it looks like that's about all I had for you anyway. I look like this, got a scared look on my face there, don't I? Yeah, I don't know if I can get this back up or not. Oh, well. Not sure why that happened. But anyway, it looks like this is probably the end anyway. The other thing I wanted to say to you is that CERN, they're going to fire up CERN on April the 8th too. And if you watch Armor of Truth Live number 187 for a detailed explanation of CERN and what a super collider is and whether or not it's responsible for opening a portal for demons and all of that. So if you don't mind looking at my shocked and scared face there, I'll finish up here with you. On April 8th, the team will send beams, particles, proton particles through the tunnel, and they'll be running the collider, which is weird. I just think it's weird that that's going to be happening on the day of the eclipse. Just a lot of weird things happening. They're going to be searching, as they normally do, for dark matter on that day. So I'm just curious, what is this? What is going on here? What is all this? What is all this fear about the eclipse? I don't know. Let us know in the description. Let us know in the comments what you think is going on with that. And I guess since we're running a little off here, since something has frozen up, I know the chat's telling me their audio is good. Yeah, so that's about all I had for you anyway today. A lot of weird things happen. We appreciate you checking in with us today, and we'll see you back here again very soon. So God bless you, friends. We'll see you next time. Yeah. There we go.
Well, that's a rather interesting position coming from a man on a crusade against the evils of technology.
I'm not against technology, Doctor. I'm against the men who deify it at the expense of human truth.
Armor of Truth. Live.
In the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel and log on armoroftruth.net.
Got it fixed. Well, since we've finished all that up, let me just remind you, if you would, folks, please like this video. Take a moment to click the thumbs up, if you would. That really helps us. Helps us more than you know. Like the video. Please share it, because I'm telling you, YouTube hates us. They don't want this to go anywhere, and they actively try to keep it down. I'm convinced, especially over on Twitter. There's no way that that's legitimate. Comment. Leave us a comment on here about what you think. That also helps us out. If you haven't yet, please subscribe. Subscribe to our channel. That also helps. But more than anything, you need to download the Armor of Truth mobile app. Right? That's 100% free. It's always going to be 100% free. One of these days, perhaps we'll be on one of those apps for your smart TV. You can just watch the show there. Pray for that. With your support, we can get there. So on the app, you get live notifications and a direct link wherever we go live. You get exclusive content. You get immediate access to our articles and resources, podcast material. You get Bible study podcasts. And if you can support us, every single donation of any amount matters, makes a huge difference. And we're extremely grateful for your support. You can use the AOT mobile app Give tab. You can visit our website, armoroftruth.net/donate, or you can follow the links in the description under this video. If you can set up a monthly recurring donation, that is really helpful for us to plan for the future, because we live month by month doing this kind of work. You never know. They could remove us at any time. So what are you waiting for, folks? Download that Armor of Truth mobile app today. Let's try this again.
Comes down and beats you over the head for the rest of your life with a big national security stick. And so that people learn to duck their head and not speak up. Because bad idea now.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps.
Find us, armoroftruth.net.
in the age of technocracy, scientism, and pop atheism,
Faith is resistance.
Nietzsche, of course, announced the death of God and called for the birth of the Übermensch, the Superman, who would take humanity to new heights and to create a new world order.
Find us at the Armor of Truth YouTube channel.
This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test.